What's up everyone, thanks for tuning in. In today's video we're going over how I edit my photographs using Adobe Lightroom. So I recently put out some photos on my social media accounts for you guys to actually vote which photos I'm going to be showing you how I edit. So these are the winners, and I'm going to be basically going through my process start to finish of how I edited these two photographs, just showing you guys a few little tips and that along the way. So hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned to see the finished result at the end, and let's go. Alright, so to start off we're going to open up Adobe Lightroom. I've got these two photographs already selected. These are the ones that you guys chose for me. I'm going to start with this one. So yeah, just quickly, if you haven't seen my first video on Adobe Lightroom, I suggest you watch that first before doing any editing. It just shows you how to correctly import and categorize everything into a really nice order, and that's going to help you so much going forward. So we've got these photos here. I'm going to select this. You can go in the top right here and click develop, or you can just press D on your keyboard and that will go through to the develop tool. Right, so what you want to start with generally when you're editing photos, you want to start big and end small, if that makes sense. So how I always start my photographs is I start by cropping them. So you can press this crop tool up here on the top right, or you can use R, and it's going to bring up the crop. In this area here you got the aspect ratio, so you can then choose that into any aspect you want. For example, if you're going to be posting on Instagram, a 4x5 portrait is really good because it takes up the most screen space, for example, on someone's phone. You've got all the normal 16:9s. You've got, things like 2x3, which is generally how most people like to print, especially in smaller print frames. And then you can also just do custom, so you can unlock the crop tool over here, and that will allow you to crop into any dimensions you want. I tend to like mine in the original, which is actually a 2x3. So what I'll then do is just drag this to where I want to crop it and move it like that. So this is basically how I'm wanting this photo to look. So this is utilizing the rule of thirds for those of you who don't know that. So you'll see these lines here show the rules of thirds. It is a photography concept that basically, to the majority of people, it looks better when objects are in these third areas. In this area we're lucky, we've got the lion as well as the truck, the game viewer behind, both in their thirds. This is not a set rule, it's just a general guideline. There's definitely ways you can ignore this rule, but yeah, there's something to note. You can also use the ruler here to basically straighten. So how that would work, if you had a line to utilize, you can drag this along horizon, for example, and it would straighten the picture to match that line, or you can just drag this like that. Just gonna undo that, so we've got a nice straight image. Then we're going to press done. So now we can move on to the basics here. So this is the basic editing tools. This is where you would, for example, decide black and white or color, and then you can basically work down. So you can start with something like temperature, so how warm or cool. We can just warm this one a little bit up just to bring the orange back of the lion. So shooting at night on Safari is a bit challenging. You've got these fluorescent lights from the game viewers shining on the animals, so they use different color globes. So your white balance sometimes needs a bit of work if you're not used to using it in the field. So this is really nice. We've got the backlit light coming from this tracker on that side, and then from the vehicle I was in, we had a light coming from our side as well. So the lion nice and lit up, but we've got a bit of a glow around his mane and the beautiful light at the back. So if you are happy with that, you can then move down. So your next big thing is things like highlight, shadows, whites and blacks. So pretty self-explanatory. Shadows is going to affect the dark shadows of the area. So if you see, especially at night here, if I bring this down, it's going to get quite dark, and you're going to lose a bit, depending on, for example, in this image. Let me just move it up, see how that brings out. So if you want to kind of draw a bit more attention to the lion, you can definitely drop this a little bit, and it's going to darken around the area. because he's lit up, so he's in the highlights at the moment, so it's not going to affect him. If I then, for example, play with these highlights and bring that down, now you're going to see the line is now affected. So you can actually bring these up just a tiny bit, just to bring him a little bit brighter. Whites and blacks, so same as highlights and shadows. And basically, if you are new to this, an easy way just to know how it's going to affect your image is to just take that slide and just move it, go up and down and kind of experiment what's it going to do. And basically these four things come together to affect your contrast. So you can do your contrast yourself by just sliding up to increase contrast, but that is very vague and it's better to have kind of a bit more control over it. You can definitely utilize this histogram graph at the top. It doesn't really work so well with photos like this because there's so much dark and shadows and darkness around where the spotlights are that it kind of throws it off, and it basically is showing that the photo is too dark, but that's kind of the look we're going for at the moment. So in the next photo that should come more in handy. We can then move down, things like texture, clarity and dehaze, just bringing out more details and sharper textures and things like that. You can play with that. Things like saturation, that's going to bring out the colors in all the colors. So in every color in your picture, that's going to bring out, make it more vibrant. And then your vibrance mainly works on things like yellows and oranges. So in this situation, you'll see it affects the line quite a lot, but not much else, where this is also going to affect the sky. So with this one, just a touch of saturation. So this photo's actually got quite very little editing in it. Something then you can also use is the tone curves. This is the same, very similar to using your highlights and shadows. So basically these points represent each part of your thing. So this one here, this is, as you can see, once again you can just play with that, things like your highlights and your whites, and then you've got highlights here, shadows and blacks. So you can move these and drag points around this graph just to make it how you kind of feel that is right. So you can see the more you bring it into that sort of a shape, the more contrast you're going to get. And you can also do this for each color as well. So for your RGBs, that's going to target more specific parts of your photo. Alright, so then something I like to do is just a little bit of post-crop vignetting, just slightly there, just to kind of close off the corners a little bit, very unnoticeable, especially in an image like this. And that's more of your general editing. You can go a bit further. If you do have parts, for example, little rocks or things you do want to remove, you can use the spot removal tool as well. You can use something that's really nice as a radial filter. So it's basically targeting a specific area. So in this sense, for example, put it on the line. If I then use the show selected mask overlay, or the shortcut is O on the keyboard, mine is selected to be inverted at the moment. Well, there's the invert, so you can either select in the circle or you can select outside the circle. For this example, I want to select outside the circle. And what you can do is, now that it's selected, it's only going to affect the picture outside of that circle. And now, for example, I can bring down the exposure outside the circle. It's going to darken the whole picture but leave that line nice and clean. Or you can do the other way, where you can change the lighting or whatever you want inside that circle. You can also use something like the spot tool. This is basically a brush. You can then just brush over a picture wherever you want, once again using O to show you where it is. And now any changes you make are only going to affect that O layer, that red area you've selected. So this is something I sometimes use if you're just trying to brighten up a specific part of the image, maybe animal's face, the animal's eyes, anything like that. You can use that as well. And that's more or less how I would edit this. Not much to do actually on this one. And yeah, nice and simple. And that's it. So we'll head over to the next one now. It's one of my favorite photos from a recent trip to Kruger National Park. So once again, we're in the develop tool and we're going to start big. So we're going to start with the crop. So for this one, I can see immediately I wanted vertical. That was just the way I've chosen. So I've just dragged the crop tool, kind of rotate it sideways, and it will change between landscape and portrait. But as you'll see, it's still in the original aspect ratio. So still in the aspect ratio I want. So for this one, I want to kind of center the leopard basically right in the middle. You'll have this tree kind of framing the outside there. That's kind of how I want it, nice and easy, not much more to do with the crop there. Now we want to basically look at this. So we can look at the histogram in this example, and you'll see more or less alright, but it's saying that your whites and highlights are a little bit much. And that's just because there's so much light coming through the background there. So we can then just take this white slider and drop that down a little, quite a lot actually. You'll see how it's affected the histogram up here. You can also just take the highlights and bring those down just so it looks a bit more flush. And we want to drag the blacks out just to meet the corner, and you'll see that brings a bit more contrast into the image itself. And this one I also actually just want to raise the shadows. We want to kind of bring out a bit more in that leopard, and basically center this main peak of the histogram more towards the middle. And we can actually also just bring the highlights down a bit. So this histogram does help you, but it's not something you have to follow all the time. So for example, this one possibly wanted to actually go a little bit darker. That's just kind of the image I actually would prefer. So now we can come down. I want to add a little bit of clarity to this one, a little bit of dehaze just to help with that really bright background. And once again, I'm going to put a little bit of a vignette on this one. And you'll see very little editing is actually required to get some, quite a big change. And you can then go, for example, let's just do another thing. If you were wanting to print an image really nice and big, what is nice is to go over here to the detail sliders here. This is basically just to focus a little bit more and sharpen parts of the image. So you can grab this masking tool here, and by holding Alt and then dragging this is going to now select what areas of the photo you want to sharpen. So you want to basically bring this down just until it's kind of, the outlines of your subject, for example. So the outline of the leopard and the outline of the spots. And then you can just use the amount slider and you can just drag that up just to sharpen. That will only sharpen those white selected areas you used during that masking tool. Alright, so that's pretty much it. We can then hit G, and that's going to go back to our grid of all our photos. And these are the two we edited. So we got the first one here on the left, and then the leopard one here on the right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And please make sure that you go over and give this video a like if you did enjoy it. If you didn't, give it a dislike. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I can improve on. And if you are enjoying videos like this or anything I do have, please go and click the subscribe button, and it would help me a lot. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, have a good day forward, and we'll see you in the next video.